I stood outside the boardroom door, my hand still on the brass handle, listening to my son-in-law's voice drift through the glass. "She's losing it," he whispered, and laughter followed, polite, nervous, young. For a moment I couldn't move. 30 years of building this firm, of carrying its weight through every storm, and now I was an aging rumor in my own halls. By the next morning, his access card wouldn't open a single door. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The elevator chimed on the 39th floor, spilling a faint echo down the carpeted hallway. Margot Langford stood there a moment, smoothing the sleeve of her blazer, watching the digital number flicker back to L. She always arrived early for board meetings. Habit, not vanity. But today she lingered just beyond the frosted glass door of the conference room. Laughter floated through the crack. "She's losing it," Grant's voice said, low but smug. Margot's breath stilled. "She doesn't even track half the deals anymore," he went on, the sound of his chair creaking as he leaned back. A pause, then Lauren's hesitant laugh, soft, unsure. "Grant, please." "What?" "I'm just saying. Maybe it's time she really retires. For good." Margot's pulse thudded once, sharp and heavy. Through the glass, she could see their reflections faintly mirrored. Grant, in his tailored navy suit, talking with that easy charisma he used like a weapon. Lauren beside him, twisting her bracelet, pretending not to hear. For a moment Margot's vision tunneled, the hum of the air vent, the faint tick of the wall clock, the lake wind whispering through the window seams, all of it pressed in like static. Then she straightened her spine, adjusted the lapel of her blazer, and pushed the door open. The hinges didn't creak. They hissed, sharp and precise. Grant looked up mid-sentence, smile already stretching too wide. "Margot, we were just—" She crossed the threshold, expression unreadable. "Starting without me?" "Just warming up," he said, his tone sliding effortlessly into charm. Lauren dropped her gaze to her notepad. The faintest shade of pink touched her cheeks. Margot walked to her seat at the head of the table. Her heels clicked like punctuation marks. Donna was there already, setting a stack of binders in front of each chair. She gave Margot a brief, knowing glance, one that asked nothing but understood everything. "Morning, everyone," Margot said evenly. Her voice had the kind of calm that could slice through noise. Grant cleared his throat. "I was just saying the firm's energy could use a little modernization. You know, new branding, digital expansion, younger leadership." Margot flipped open her leather folder. The faint scent of ink and paper grounded her. "Younger leadership." Grant grinned, taking the bait. "Exactly. The market's shifting fast. We can't rely on legacy alone." She turned a page, slow and deliberate. "Legacy," she repeated. "That's an interesting word choice." The silence that followed was a taut wire. Stanley Roth adjusted his glasses, pretending to study his notes. No one dared breathe too loudly. Grant chuckled again, though the sound carried a hint of nerves this time. "I only meant, your name built this place. But we all have to look ahead, right?" Margot met his eyes, her own a calm, pale steel. "Indeed. I do that every day." For the next 40 minutes, the meeting rolled on in polite monotones. Financial updates, client renewals, case projections. But beneath every exchange, the air crackled with unspoken tension. Grant spoke too much. Lauren barely spoke at all. And Margot took notes. Not on the agenda, but on tone, posture, motive. Every word Grant said became evidence. When the meeting adjourned, Grant lingered by the door, his hand grazing Lauren's back as they left. "Lunch later?" he asked, just loud enough. "Sure," Lauren murmured. Margot waited until they disappeared down the hall before standing. Donna was collecting coffee cups. Everything all right, Ms. Langford? Margot's lips curved faintly. Perfectly. I just remembered something I forgot to do. Donna tilted her head. What's that? Margot slipped her folder under her arm. Listen more carefully. She walked out, her heels echoing through the marble corridor, each step deliberate. The firm's glass walls reflected her image back, composed, elegant, untouchable. But her mind was no longer in that hallway. It was moving, calculating, reorganizing. Because Grant Hayes had made a fatal mistake. Not the whisper itself, but the assumption behind it. That she wouldn't hear. That she wouldn't notice. That she was losing it. Margot reached her office, closed the door softly behind her, and let out one quiet, measured breath. Her hands didn't shake. She opened her laptop, pulled up the firm's internal access records, and smiled at the timestamp from 30 minutes ago. Grant Hayes, boardroom access, 8:01 a.m. Her eyes hardened. Good, she murmured to herself. You've already started the paper trail. She closed the laptop and looked toward the Chicago skyline, the lake's pale shimmer caught in morning light. Tomorrow, he'd swipe that same access card again. And nothing would open. The Langford Lake House sat just off Sheridan Road, where the city's skyline faded into still water and dark pines. From the outside, the place looked peaceful. Lights glowing through tall windows, the smell of rosemary chicken drifting out into the cold air. But inside, tension hummed low, like the thrum of a faulty wire behind the walls. Margot set the last fork beside the polished plate. She'd insisted on cooking tonight, though Lauren had offered to order catering. Home feels different when it smells like dinner, she'd said. Truth was, Margot needed control over something, anything, that didn't talk back or plot behind glass doors. Grant arrived late. Always did. Traffic, he announced, breezing in with the easy charm of a man who believed every excuse sounded reasonable if it came with a smile. His coat landed across a chair, his cologne, something aggressively modern, cut through the warm smell of the meal. Lauren was already seated, her shoulders tight, fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. You made it, she said softly. Of course I made it, he replied, kissing her cheek in a way that felt performative more than affectionate. Wouldn't miss dinner with the Queen of Langford and Roth. Margot's mouth twitched. I abdicated years ago, she said, pouring wine into his glass. You can stop bowing. Grant grinned. Just showing respect for legacy. That word again. Legacy. He used it the way other people used apologies, often and insincerely. Dinner started smoothly enough. Small talk, weather, a few perfunctory compliments about the wine. But by the second glass, Grant's voice had grown louder, looser. The careful corporate polish he wore during the day began to crack. You know what the firm needs? He said, setting his fork down with too much force. Energy, vision, someone who can drag it into this century. Lauren's knife paused mid-cut. Grant. No, I mean it. He leaned back, swirling his glass. Half our systems are outdated. Our branding looks like it was built when Reagan was president. If we want to compete, we need a personality rebrand? Margot asked, her tone cool but faintly amused. Grant blinked. What? Nothing, she said, sipping her wine. Go on. He frowned but continued. We've got to stop thinking like old money. Clients don't care about mahogany desks and legacy anymore. They want speed, technology, modern leadership. Leadership, Margot repeated softly. That's what you're after? He laughed, maybe too quickly. Well, someone has to carry the torch when you finally relax, right? Lauren winced. Grant? Margot's expression didn't change. Relaxation isn't really my style, she said, but I appreciate your concern. He missed the sharp edge under her calm. We could really use your blessing on a few initiatives, he continued. You know, social media campaigns, new hiring filters, maybe trimming some of the old guard. Margot's knife clinked against her plate. Old guard. Not you. Obviously. He grinned again, desperate to recapture charm. You're timeless. The line was meant to flatter, but it landed like insult. Lauren's eyes flickered toward her mother, silently pleading for the night to end. Margot dabbed her lips with a linen napkin and rose from her seat. If you'll excuse me, she said, her tone gentle but final. I have a few emails to finish before the night disappears. Grant waved a hand. Work never ends with you, huh? Apparently not. She left him laughing at his own wit, the sound echoing down the hallway like a loose hinge. Lauren sat there, twisting her wedding band, eyes unfocused on the flicker of the candles. Margot's study was at the far end of the house, quiet, lined with dark shelves and framed photographs of a younger firm when ambition had come wrapped in respect. She closed the door behind her and exhaled slowly. The quiet here was her kind of peace, thick, intentional, and sharp enough to think inside. She powered on her laptop, its glow painting her face in cool light. The firm's digital ledger opened with a password no one but she and Simon knew. Margot scrolled down the ownership structure, watching the names and percentages populate the screen like chess pieces on a board. Her name still sat on top. Langford. Few. 51%. A slow, satisfied breath left her lips. Control. Intact. Despite whispers, despite charm, despite all the subtle undermining dressed as progress, she still held the reins. Down the hall she could hear faint laughter. Grant's, then Lauren's attempt to soften it. Margot stared at the ledger one more moment, then closed the laptop. Drag the firm into this century, she whispered. We'll see who does the dragging. She turned off the lamp, leaving the room in half-darkness. Outside, the lake lapped quietly against the shore, its rhythm steady, patient, inevitable. Like the plan already forming in her mind. The city was still half asleep when Grant Hayes pulled into the parking structure beneath Langford and Roth. The sky hung low and pale, that particular shade of Chicago gray that promised neither rain nor mercy. He balanced a venti coffee in one hand and his phone in the other, humming to himself as the elevator doors opened on the lobby. It was just past 6:30, earlier than usual, but he liked arriving before the partners, before Margot, especially after that dinner at the lake house. He'd replayed her look all weekend, that cool, unreadable calm that never cracked, no matter how far he pushed. She was infuriating that way, but she was also slipping. He could feel it. The firm was ready for change, and he was ready to lead it. Grant adjusted his tie as he approached the glass security gates. The lobby gleamed, polished marble, hanging greenery, sunlight barely catching through the east windows. He swiped his badge with a practiced flick. Beep. Red light. He frowned. Swiped again. Beep. Red. He laughed under his breath. Come on, not today. A third try. Beep. Red again. The security guard at the desk looked up from his monitor. His name tag read T. Carson, a young guy, polite, forgettable. Morning, Mr. Hayes, Carson said. Everything all right? Looks like my card's acting up, Grant said lightly. Probably IT updating the system. Carson checked his screen, his brow tightening. Says here you've been... flagged? Flagged? Grant repeated, forcing a smile. That can't be right. It is handling it, Carson said, his voice lowering slightly. Should be temporary. Grant's pulse ticked faster. Temporary as in 5 minutes or as in... Just a moment, sir. Carson picked up his phone, turned his back. Grant took a sip of coffee, pretending to scroll his phone, trying to look bored instead of irritated. His reflection in the glass doors looked as confident as ever. Perfectly pressed suit, expensive haircut, nothing out of place. But something was out of place. He could feel it. He stepped aside, pretending to text. 2. Simon Kwong. Hey buddy, card access issue. Can you check on my account? Probably nothing. He hit send and waited. Simon always replied fast, faster than anyone in the building. But now, the minutes stretched, and his phone stayed silent. At 6:45, Carson turned back. Sorry, Mr. Hayes. It says they'll contact you directly once it's cleared. You can wait in the lobby if you'd like. Grant's jaw tightened. Sure, I'll wait. He sat in one of the sleek gray chairs near the elevator bank. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish. Each passing employee swiped in easily, the green light flashing in smooth rhythm. He checked his phone again. Nothing. At 7:05, he tried calling Simon directly. Straight to voicemail. Simon, hey, it's Grant. Need you to call me back ASAP. My card's not working. This is ridiculous. He hung up, waited 30 seconds, then called again. Same result. Behind the reception desk, Carson kept glancing his way, careful not to stare. Grant finished his coffee in 2 angry gulps. The lobby felt smaller now, the air too warm. He loosened his tie, shifted his weight, forced himself to smile at a passing paralegal who waved hesitantly. Finally, at 7:18, he tried Lauren. Hey, you're up early, she answered, voice still soft with sleep. Yeah, because I'm sitting in the damn lobby like a temp, he said. My card won't scan. They said it's handling it. Handling it? She repeated. That's odd. Maybe it's a system update. Maybe, he muttered. But Simon's ghosting me. Something's off. Lauren hesitated. Did you talk to my mother lately? Grant paused. No. Why? Just asking. Her tone was strange, gentle, careful, like she already knew something he didn't. He hung up soon after, his irritation simmering into something colder. The clock on the wall ticked toward 8. A few partners arrived, nodding politely as they passed through the turnstiles. He noticed one of them glance his way, then quickly look down. By 8:30, he couldn't stand it anymore. He stood, smoothed his jacket, and walked up to the desk. Carson, did I give you any update at all? The guard avoided his eyes. Sorry, sir, they didn't. Grant leaned closer. Then get me Simon. Now. I can't, sir. Why the hell not? Carson's throat bobbed. His office door's locked. Grant froze. Locked? Yes, sir. Grant took a slow step back, the lobby's fluorescent light flattening everything around him. His reflection in the glass looked different now. Paler, smaller, out of rhythm. He forced a smirk, trying to bury the unease curling in his gut. Fine. I'll just wait. Tell Simon I'm not leaving until he fixes this. Carson nodded nervously. Grant sat again, eyes fixed on the turnstiles, each green light blinking in time with his pulse. Then, across the lobby, he saw movement. Donna Reyes, Margot's assistant, stepping out of the elevator with a stack of folders. She caught sight of him. Her expression didn't change, but she didn't wave either. She simply adjusted the papers, turned, and disappeared into another hallway. Grant exhaled slowly. His smile faltered for the first time. He didn't know it yet, but the lockout wasn't a glitch. It was the quiet click of a door that wasn't ever going to open again. The city unfurled in muted silver outside Margot's office windows, Lake Michigan churning under a brittle February sky. She preferred mornings like this, unforgiving, clean, honest. Chicago in its truest form. The phone on her desk buzzed once. Donna. He's still downstairs. Starbucks cup. Nervous energy. Margot smiled faintly. Let him wait. She closed the message and turned back to her screen. Her reading glasses caught the reflection of spreadsheets. Rows of numbers, billing hours, timestamps, initials. She'd asked Simon to extract the last 9 months of Grant's activity from the internal system. He hadn't asked why. Simon never did. 9 months. Long enough to grow complacent. Long enough to start leaving fingerprints. The cursor blinked beside Grant's name. He'd logged more than 2,000 billable hours. On paper, that looked impressive. Heroic, even. But Margot knew the rhythm of real work. No one with that many strategy sessions and client follow-ups could also spend their afternoons parading around the firm's corridors, charming associates, and talking about modernization. She scrolled further, the faint tap of her keyboard the only sound in the office. Each line item told a story, and Grant's story reeked of arrogance. Overlapping timestamps, duplicate entries, meetings that never happened. She opened the digital case notes linked to his billing. Half were copy-pasted from old files. Some referenced clients who hadn't been active in months. Margot leaned back, the leather chair sighing beneath her. 9 months of embellishment. 1,000 small betrayals disguised as efficiency. The truth wasn't that Grant didn't understand the firm's legacy. He just thought he could fake it faster than anyone would notice. Her inbox pinged. A new message slid into view. Reagan Finch, HR. Subject: Review irregularities in Hayes billing. Want me to loop HR in officially? Margot's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The decision was simple, but she typed it with deliberate precision. Loop. Hard. She hit send. Outside her office, the low murmur of early morning chatter filled the air. Donna fielding calls, associates greeting each other in passing. The energy had shifted already. Subtle but certain. Word would get around soon enough that something was wrong with Grant Hayes. It always did. Margot minimized the billing sheet and opened her phone. A new text lit the screen. Lauren. Grant says he's locked out. Is everything okay? Margot stared at the words for a moment. They weren't just a question. They were a plea. Lauren was caught between two worlds again, the one she married into and the one she came from. Margot typed her response slowly, each word chosen with surgical restraint. It's under review. She set the phone face down and returned to her screen. From the corner of her eye, she caught her reflection in the glass. Still, composed, but sharper than usual. Revenge wasn't new to her. Power had always been the quieter twin of justice. She'd spent decades teaching men like Grant that charm was not a substitute for competence. This time, though, it was personal. He hadn't just underestimated her. He'd corrupted what she built. Her computer chimed again. Simon this time. Pull complete. Do you want deeper access? Private folders? Email threads? Margot smiled faintly. He already knew the answer. Yes. Discreetly. She watched the cursor blink as the message sent. Her hand reached for her mug. Black coffee, gone cold. But she didn't drink. The caffeine wasn't what she needed. She was already wide awake. By mid-morning, the quiet hum of the office shifted into something more brittle. Reagan walked past her door, tablet in hand, eyes flicking up just long enough to meet Margot's. No words exchanged, but the signal was clear. Audit in motion. Donna appeared a few minutes later, closing the door behind her. Do you want me to brief Stanley yet? Not until we have something he can't ignore, Margot said. Donna nodded, slid a printed sheet across the desk. Grant's digital access log, every entry color-coded. You'll want to look at these. Margot skimmed the highlighted lines. Weekends? Every other Saturday, Donna said. Usually between 11 and 2. Always alone. Margot's brows lifted slightly. Diligent man. Donna's lips curved. Or sloppy. Margot didn't answer. She was already thinking ahead, calculating the next 3 moves. HR would confirm discrepancies. Simon would trace data transfers, and Grant, poor, confident Grant, would keep calling, leaving a breadcrumb trail of indignation she could use later. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Lauren. Mom, please don't make this worse than it is. Margot's reply came instantly. I'm not making it worse. I'm making it visible. For a moment, she just sat there, fingers resting on the keyboard, the cold light from the window bleaching the color from everything around her. Across the city, Grant was probably still pacing, making phone calls, rehearsing explanations that wouldn't matter. He thought this was temporary. A mix-up, a system glitch. He still believed the game was about access. He hadn't yet realized it was about ownership. Margot clicked print. The machine behind her hummed to life, spitting out sheets of paper, proof, line by line. She gathered them neatly into a folder, her motions deliberate, methodical. When the printer fell silent, she closed the folder and placed it beside her coffee mug. Her hand lingered on the cover for a heartbeat. Then she whispered, more to herself than to the empty room, "You wanted modernization, Grant. Welcome to the digital age." She picked up her phone, dialed Donna. "Get Reagan and Simon in here. We're moving forward." Outside her office window, the wind off the lake hit the glass with a hollow thud. Soft, rhythmic, relentless. Something had begun that couldn't be stopped. The afternoon light over Lake Michigan had thinned into glass gray by the time Margot reopened her laptop. The city hummed far below, indifferent, efficient, relentless. Everything she'd once trained her associates to be. She, too, had learned from Chicago. When the wind turns, face it. A quiet ping signaled Simon's message. Transfer complete. All flagged correspondence, folder titled Hayes Comms Audit. Encrypted. You're the only one with access. Margot slipped on her glasses and clicked the folder. The loading icon spun for a breath, then opened into a neat stack of digital sins. The first thread, Grant and a junior associate, Melissa Caro, 27, eager, naive enough to mistake attention for mentorship. M. Attach client pitch doc, draft. Don't send to team yet, just to me. Need to refine strategy. The attached file carried a non-disclosure label from a Fortune 500 client. Margot's eyes narrowed. She opened another. Grant. Pull the exec contact list from the merger file, not the sanitized version. I need the real numbers. Melissa. That's restricted. Only the board can... Grant. Just do it. No one checks metadata. The screen reflected against her glasses, twin panes of cold blue light. Every word tightened a thread in her chest, each message proof that Grant had not only breached confidentiality, but had done it with swagger. She clicked deeper. Late-night messages, time-stamped after midnight. Half flirtation, half manipulation. You're sharp. Too sharp to be stuck behind Donna's desk. When I take over, I'll make sure talent like yours doesn't go unnoticed. Margot's lips parted in a faint, disbelieving smile. When I take over. Her fingers moved quickly now, highlighting key phrases, flagging attachments, marking evidence like a prosecutor preparing her closing argument. The printer hummed behind her, steady, methodical. Sheets spilled into the tray, the smell of toner sharp in the air. When the last page landed, she arranged the stack neatly, then underlined one sentence twice with a red pen. No one checks metadata. The office door clicked open without a knock. Donna leaned in, holding a single sticky note. Reagan's calling. Margot gestured toward the speakerphone. Patch her through. Reagan's voice came crisp and controlled. I've reviewed the emails Simon sent. This isn't padding. It's malpractice. Are you thinking suspension or termination? Margot looked at the papers spread across her desk. The evidence glowed under the lamplight like a confession written in code. Not yet, she said quietly. Reagan paused. Not yet? I want him to squirm first. Donna raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Reagan exhaled on the other end. Understood. HR will stay quiet for now. Let me know when to pull the trigger. The line clicked off. Outside the glass wall of Margot's office, Grant's reflection flickered in the hallway window, pacing, talking into his phone, gesturing with irritation. His confidence had cracked. Even from here, she could see it. Donna followed her gaze. He's been out there 20 minutes, waiting for someone to explain what's happening. Margot leaned back, calm and deliberate. Let him wait. He built his house on noise. Silence will rattle him more. Donna allowed herself a small, tight smile. You always did understand strategy better than he does. Strategy isn't about speed, Margot said. It's about patience and precision. Donna left her alone then, closing the door with a muted click. Margot turned off the overhead lights, letting the lake's gray light wash through the office. The sound of the printer's final hum faded into quiet. She gathered the evidence, emails, attachments, timestamps, and placed them in a manila folder labeled simply, Hayes, Confidential. Her phone buzzed once. A new text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. We could have done this together. Grant. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Instead, she clicked open her system dashboard, where Simon's audit interface was still live. At the top of the screen, a new alert pulsed in red. Alert. Remote access attempt. Board files directory. User. Gaze. Margot froze for only a heartbeat, then smiled. The kind of slow, quiet smile that came from inevitability rather than surprise. Oh, Grant, she murmured. You just handed me the rest. Her hand reached for the intercom. Donna, tell Simon to isolate the attempt and preserve the log. Every byte. Yes, ma'am. Margot's gaze lingered on the screen, where the red alert still blinked. Evidence in motion, arrogance immortalized in code. Outside, the lake caught a sliver of dying sun. The skyline shimmered for a moment, as if bowing before the storm it didn't yet see coming. Margot closed her laptop, the sound sharp as a gavel. Tomorrow, he'd learn what it felt like when the walls you built start locking from the inside. The call went out just after dawn, short, formal, without room for interpretation. Emergency board meeting, attendance required. 9 a.m. sharp. Conference room A. Grant Hayes was not on the invite list. By 8:30, the top floor of Langford and Roth felt heavier than usual. The skyline outside shimmered through a thin morning haze, but inside, the air carried that pre-storm stillness, the kind Margot had always trusted. It meant control was shifting. Donna moved efficiently through the corridor, setting out bottled water, fresh notepads, and a discreetly stapled packet at each leather chair. Her movements were precise, rehearsed, almost reverent. She knew what this morning was. Not a discussion, but a reckoning. Margot stood at the window, her back to the room, watching Lake Michigan catch the faint winter light. Her reflection merged with the city, sharp lines and pale steel. Behind her, the double doors opened as the partners filed in. Stanley Roth was first, his gait measured but still proud. The quiet authority of a man who'd spent 50 years steering storms. Morning, Margot, he said. You called this early. That's never casual. She turned, the corners of her mouth forming the faintest suggestion of a smile. You know me too well. Stanley took his seat at her right. One by one, the others followed. Reagan Finch with her tablet already unlocked. Simon with a sealed envelope under his arm. Donna settling into her usual place by the door. When the doors shut, the room sealed into silence. The only sound came from the soft hum of the HVAC and the click of Margot's heels as she walked to the head of the table. Thank you all for coming, she began. Her tone was even, deliberate. I'll keep this direct. We have a problem. A cultural one, and it's wearing a tailored Hugo Boss suit. A murmur rippled across the table. Stanley's brow lifted. Grant. Grant, Margot confirmed. She tapped her tablet, and the wall display lit up. A timeline of emails, transactions, and flagged access attempts. Simon's team ran a digital audit. The findings are illustrative. Donna rose quietly, distributing printed copies of the report, each page neatly tabbed, highlighted, devastating. Margot continued, "In 9 months, Grant Hayes has fabricated billing hours, mishandled privileged documents, and, most recently, attempted remote access to restricted board-level files." Reagan's voice was calm, but clipped. "Intentional?" Simon answered before Margot could. "There's no doubt. The metadata shows multiple logins under his credentials, all routed through his personal IP address. This wasn't curiosity. It was extraction." The room went very still. Stanley folded his hands on the table, eyes on Margot. "How far did he get?" Margot's gaze didn't waver. "Nowhere. He tripped the alert before the first file opened." Reagan exhaled softly. "And HR?" Margot nodded. "Already prepped. Documentation is airtight." Stanley leaned back, studying her. "You sound like you've rehearsed this." "I have," Margot said. "For months, apparently." Donna slid a fresh document toward him, Grant's email threads with Melissa Caro. Stanley scanned the first few lines and his jaw tightened. "Jesus." Reagan shook her head. "She's barely out of law school." Margot's tone cooled. "He thought charm was a shield. It isn't." Stanley's voice dropped low. "What do you need from us?" Margot didn't hesitate. Backup, silence, and a vote. The weight of the room settled around her words. Stanley looked down at the evidence again, then up at her. "Unanimous?" "It will be," Margot said. Donna handed him a pen. He signed without question. One by one, the others followed. When the last signature hit paper, Margot gathered the pages carefully, aligning their edges against the table's polished surface. "Effective immediately," she said, her voice steady. "Grant Hayes is suspended pending termination. His access is revoked, his communications monitored, and HR will formalize the file." Reagan nodded. "Understood." Stanley leaned back, his tone more subdued now. "You've built this firm like a fortress, Margot. I suppose every fortress needs a moat." Margot looked at him, a faint glint in her eye. It already had one. He just didn't know where the drawbridge was. Soft laughter rippled through the room, nervous, respectful, restrained. As the meeting broke, chairs pushed back, papers gathered, and quiet goodbyes were exchanged. Simon lingered last, waiting until the others had left. "You should know," he said, lowering his voice. "The remote attempt wasn't from his office. It came from his condo downtown." Margot paused in the act of closing her folder. "Then he's still trying." "Seems that way," Simon said. "He doesn't know he triggered another trace." Margot's eyes drifted toward the glass wall, where the city stretched endless and cold. "Good," she said softly. "Let him dig. It'll save me the trouble of burying him." Simon gave a curt nod and left. Alone again, Margot stood at the head of the empty boardroom. The polished table reflected the faint glow of the skyline behind her. She rested both hands on the leather chair Grant used to favor, fingers brushing its smooth edge. Through the door's frosted glass, she could see movement, a shadow pacing just beyond the hallway. Grant. Waiting. She didn't move to open the door. The handle shifted slightly, then stopped. Silence followed. Margot glanced once at the locked door, then gathered her folder, calm as ever. "Boardroom's full, Grant," she murmured to herself. "You'll have to find another floor." She turned off the lights, leaving the room in twilight. Outside, his silhouette lingered a few seconds longer, then disappeared down the hall. The storm that hit the next morning wasn't on the weather radar. It was digital. Simon's email arrived at 6:42 a.m. Subject line, Hayes, access logs, complete. Margot opened it before her first sip of coffee. A spreadsheet glared back at her. Columns of timestamps, floor levels, door IDs. Each row another breadcrumb. Grant's name appeared again and again. Saturdays, Sundays, 11:07 p.m., 1:13 a.m. He'd been haunting the building like a restless ghost long after everyone else had gone home. She scrolled slowly, her pulse steady, but her jaw tight. He hadn't just been sloppy. He'd been brazen. Multiple floors. Simon's note read beneath the file. Records room, finance, even HR, confirmed he used Lauren's guest access once. Margot's stomach tightened, not with surprise, but with understanding. Grant wasn't just breaking rules, he was studying them, probing their limits. Her phone buzzed. Reagan Finch. "Morning," Margot answered. "Morning," Reagan said. Her tone was sharp as a staple. "Simon looped me in. We've initiated a formal ethics inquiry. Documentation's airtight. You should review the draft before I send it to the bar's oversight committee." "Do that," Margot said, her eyes never leaving the glowing screen. "And Reagan." "Yes?" "No press. Not yet." "Understood." The call ended, and the silence of Margot's office deepened. Outside, snow feathered lightly against the glass, softening the skyline. Inside, everything was hard edges and cold light. She tapped her intercom. "Donna, pull the archived Dropbox logs from our last IT audit. I want to know where those after-hours files landed." "Already on it," came the answer. Minutes later, Simon stepped into her office with a flash drive. He wasn't clever enough to mask the trail. Everything he moved, draft contracts, executive memos, client evaluations, it's all mirrored on a private Dropbox under his personal email. Margot leaned back. "What address?" Simon hesitated. "A shared one. Looks like he added another user, Melissa Caro." Margot didn't blink. Of course he did. Simon placed a folder on her desk. Printouts, file paths, screenshots. The evidence stack was beginning to look like a book without an ending yet. "He's trying to cover himself now," Simon said. "Deleting things, renaming folders. But it's too late. Every change leaves a fingerprint." Margot glanced up at him. "Keep monitoring, quietly." He nodded once and left. She stared down at the logs again. Grant's pattern was obvious now. Late nights, duplicated files, unauthorized copies of client data. And yet, she could almost hear his voice in her mind, that slippery charm he wrapped around every lie. "Legacy, Margot. We need younger leadership." Younger leadership. She'd seen what that meant now. Entitlement without substance. Her phone chimed again. A text this time, from Lauren. "Mom, I'm sorry. He said it's just a misunderstanding. He's scared. Please don't make this ugly." The words sat on the screen like a bruise. Margot set the phone down without replying. There was nothing to say. Her daughter's loyalty had always been her blind spot. Sweet, well-intentioned, and disastrously misplaced. She turned her chair toward the window, watching the gray lake churn. From this height, the city looked like an organism. Lit windows, moving cars, all of it functioning without pause. It reminded her that no single cell was irreplaceable. Behind her, the office printer kicked on again. Donna's timing was perfect. The reports she'd requested slid into the tray, each page stamped and logged. When Donna entered, Margot didn't turn around. "He's in deeper than he knows," Donna said quietly. "I know," Margot replied. "Reagan says HR's ready whenever you are." Margot finally faced her. "Not yet. Let him twist a little longer. People like Grant don't confess under pressure, they perform." Donna gave a small nod and left, closing the door behind her. Margot took the printed pages, fanned them across her desk, and began marking connections. Red lines linking Grant's unauthorized access times with the documents he'd moved. It looked like a map of a crime scene, drawn in veins. The intercom buzzed once more. Simon's voice came through, lower now, tense. Margot, you might want to see this. He's online again, accessing that same Dropbox. But this time, it's from a new device. Her pen stilled mid-line. From where? Unclear. IP traces to a downtown cafe. He's moving files. Margot's voice dropped to a near whisper. Then lock him out. Already did, Simon said. And he knows. He just tried to log back in. 3 times. Margot sat in the stillness that followed, listening to the faint whir of the city outside her window. She imagined Grant at some cafe table, jaw clenched, coffee cooling beside him as he realized the walls were closing in. Her phone buzzed again, a final message from Lauren. Please, just talk to him. He says you've misunderstood everything. Margot turned the phone face down and stared at the reflection of the city in her window. Not yet, she murmured. Her gaze hardened. This wasn't misunderstanding. It was history. One she'd built, and one he'd tried to rewrite. Outside, snow flurried against the glass like static, and in the distance, a siren cut through the wind, shrill, fleeting, and already fading. The underground garage was almost empty when Donna Reyes locked her car. Fluorescent lights hummed above her, pale against the concrete. It was close to 8 p.m., late enough that the rest of the firm had long gone home. She clutched her bag tight, balancing a stack of manila folders against her hip, and turned toward the elevator. Donna. The voice came from behind a pillar, low, sharp, unmistakable. Grant stepped out of the shadows, hands jammed into his coat pockets. His tie was loose, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and something darker. She didn't flinch. You shouldn't be down here. I work here. Not lately, you don't. He moved closer, his shoes scraping against the concrete. What's going on? Donna didn't answer. She hit the elevator button, keeping her gaze fixed on the glowing floor numbers above the door. Don't give me the silent act, he snapped. You've been avoiding me all week. Everyone has. I'm locked out of every system. HR won't take my calls, and Simon won't look me in the eye. You know something. The elevator doors stayed shut. Donna could feel his frustration coiling tighter, like a wire ready to snap. He took another step. You think I don't see it? Margot's pulling strings again. She's turning everyone against me. You've been with her forever. What did she tell you? Donna turned then, calm, measured, her voice steady as stone. She didn't have to tell me anything, Grant. Your work did the talking. Grant blinked. Excuse me? You'll find out soon enough. The elevator dinged, doors sliding open. She stepped inside without looking back. As they closed between them, she caught one last glimpse of his face, anger twisting with fear. Upstairs, in the quiet of her office, Reagan Finch drafted the final document. The misconduct report was clinical and complete. Unauthorized access, ethics breach, confidential data transfer. HR Code 7.12. She reread every line twice before attaching the exhibits. Simon's logs, Donna's statement, Margot's authorization. Her cursor hovered over the send button. With a single click, Grant Hayes' career began its free fall. Margot sat in her study at home that night, the firm's server dashboard glowing across her laptop. The digital fortress Simon had built was now airtight. Every external file, every email, every data request automatically flagged for review. Red notifications blinked like tiny beacons of vigilance. It was done. Almost. Her phone rang. Lauren. Margot stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Mom. The word came out shaky, like it had been caught in her throat. Did you set him up? Margot's eyes stayed on the screen, scrolling through system alerts as she spoke. He handed me everything. I just filed it. You don't understand, Lauren said, her voice cracking. "He's saying you trapped him, that you've been watching him for months. He's scared, Mom. He says—" Margot's tone didn't waver. "Scared men invent stories. They blame the mirror instead of what's in it." There was a silence on the other end, then a whisper. "You sound proud." Margot's jaw softened, but only slightly. "No, Lauren, just certain." Lauren's breathing hitched once more before the call went dead. Margot exhaled slowly and set the phone beside her keyboard. For a moment, the quiet pressed in. Just the faint tick of the clock, the hum of the heating vents, the rhythm of inevitability. Then, a new alert pulsed across the server dashboard. External upload attempt blocked. Source: user G. Chase. Margot allowed herself a small smile. "Predictable," she murmured. Simon's instant message popped up seconds later. System note: attempt contained fragments of client data, flagged and archived. Hayes doesn't know he's triggering surveillance. She typed back, "Good. Keep him thinking he's invisible." Her reflection in the dark window looked colder than she felt, focused, resolved. This wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. A knock at the door pulled her attention. Donna stood there, coat draped over her arm, face pale from the cold. "It's done," she said simply. Margot nodded. "Everything filed?" "Reagan sent the final report to legal and HR." "Perfect." Donna hesitated. "You know he confronted me tonight?" Margot's eyes flicked up. "And?" "He's angry, desperate, he won't stop." "Good," Margot said. "Desperation makes men sloppy." Donna gave a small nod, understanding. "Drive safe, Ms. Langford." When the door closed, Margot leaned back, letting the silence settle around her again. The lake outside her windows was dark, the wind pressing faint streaks of snow against the glass. She felt the pulse of the city through the floor, the constant motion of something alive and ruthless. In her inbox, a new message from Reagan appeared. Subject: report filed with legal. Official notice will be delivered tomorrow. Body: he'll see it coming. Margot stared at the line for a moment before replying. He never does. She closed the laptop, the sound crisp in the quiet room. Outside, the storm thickened, white spirals under the lamplight twisting like shredded paper. And somewhere downtown, Grant Hayes was probably still pacing, still trying to guess where the mistake had started. He'd think it began with a lockout. He'd be wrong. It began the moment he underestimated her. The email arrived at 7:04 a.m. Subject line: Compliance Review Meeting, 10 hours a.m., Conference Room B. Grant read it twice, then once more for reassurance. Routine, it said. Brief. Routine. That was the word he clung to. By 9:30, he was in the elevator, freshly shaved, wearing his best navy suit, the one he used for client pitches and damage control. He told himself this was a misunderstanding, an overzealous audit. HR did this sort of thing all the time. He'd charm them, straighten it out, walk out clean. That's what he did. He turned storms into opportunities. When the doors slid open onto the 39th floor, everything looked exactly as it should. The hallway was calm, the hum of printers steady, the air faintly perfumed with coffee and professionalism. But as he walked toward Conference Room B, the silence felt curated. Inside, 4 chairs were arranged around the long glass table. Donna stood near the door, a red folder in her hands. Reagan Finch sat across from her, tablet open, stylus poised. Simon Kwong lingered near the far wall, his laptop closed, expression unreadable. And at the head of the table, Margot Langford. "Morning, Grant," she said. Her tone was polite, cold, but polite. He smiled like he meant it. "Morning. What's all this? Quarterly compliance, right?" "Something like that," Reagan replied. He took the seat across from Margot, resting his hands casually on the table. Happy to help clear this up? Donna stepped forward, placing the red folder directly in front of him. The sound of it hitting the glass was small, but decisive. What's this? Documentation, Reagan said. Please, take your time. Grant flipped it open. The first page was a printed summary. Internal Ethics and Data Breach Report G. Hayes. He blinked, the words not quite registering. The second page was an email log. His own, subject lines highlighted in yellow. The third was a Dropbox audit record, his username stamped beside every download. Hold on, he said, his voice breaking into a nervous laugh. This is ridiculous. Someone's making this look worse than it is. Reagan's tone didn't change. The metadata matches your account credentials, your devices, and your IP address. You accessed and exported multiple files marked confidential. That's not interpretation, Mr. Hayes. That's evidence. He looked to Simon. Tell them this is a tech glitch. You know the system better than anyone. Simon didn't move. No glitch, he said quietly. Every log is verified. Donna added, including your after-hours entries. Grant's eyes darted to Margot. You put them up to this. You're behind it, aren't you? Margot leaned back in her chair, calm as ice. You're behind it, Grant. I'm just the one who finally turned the lights on. Reagan began reading. Each line was another nail. Dates, file names, client codes, hours billed that didn't exist. Her voice was clinical, detached, every syllable deliberate. Grant shifted in his seat. This is insane. You think I'd risk my career for what? Dropbox files? Some paperwork? You're all blowing this out of proportion. Reagan didn't pause. Unauthorized access to HR files, February 3rd. Breach of non-disclosure, March 12th. Confidential data transmission, multiple instances through Q2 and Q3. The list went on, each violation punctuated by the soft click of her stylus against the tablet. Grant's breath came shorter. He looked at Donna, searching for something human, but her face was professional stone. You've known me for years, he said. You think I'd really do this? Her reply was quiet but final. I think you already did. A muscle twitched in his jaw. This is about Margot, isn't it? You're protecting her empire. God forbid anyone tries to make the firm modern. Margot finally leaned forward. Her hands were folded neatly on the table, nails immaculate, expression unreadable. You confuse modern with reckless. Innovation doesn't mean theft. Grant's mouth opened. But Simon stepped forward and placed a single sheet of paper on the table, a printout of the Dropbox folder directory. Grant stared at the bold heading. Chawa Hayes, personal backup, shared with M. Caro. Melissa Caro's name burned up at him like a flare. You don't understand, he began. She helped me with pitch drafts. That's all. Those were harmless. Reagan looked at him evenly. Harmless breaches still violate the law. Grant pushed back his chair, standing abruptly. I'm not doing this. I don't have to sit here and listen to... The door opened behind him. 2 uniformed security officers stepped inside, calm and efficient. Grant froze. You've got to be kidding me. Mr. Hayes, one said evenly. We'll need your badge and laptop. Grant turned toward Margot, disbelief curdling into rage. You can't do this. You don't have the authority. Margot rose slowly, every inch of her composure deliberate. Actually, I do. The board voted unanimously last week. His face drained of color. You... But the sentence never finished. Donna reached across and collected the red folder from the table, closing it neatly as if sealing a file cabinet. Simon powered down his laptop. Reagan signed the digital report with one stroke of her stylus. Security moved closer. Grant's voice dropped, low and venomous. You're going to regret this. Margot met his eyes, unflinching. You've already done the regretting for both of us. He hesitated, then slammed his badge onto the table. It landed with a dull, final thud. As security escorted him out, the glass door whispered shut behind them. Silence filled the room like smoke. Reagan exhaled. Well? Margot looked toward the door. He'll try to talk his way back in. They always do. Donna asked quietly, Should I alert reception? Margot's voice was calm, almost kind. No need. His access card won't work anywhere in the building. Outside, Grant's reflection passed across the frosted glass. Blurred, fading, erased. The city outside was brittle with late winter light when Grant Hayes walked through the firm's lobby for the last time. His reflection ghosted across the marble floor, jacket half-buttoned, tie loose, the confident stride of a man pretending not to bleed. Reagan Finch was waiting near reception, her tablet tucked under her arm, a plain envelope in her hand. Two security officers lingered discreetly behind her, polite shadows. Mr. Hayes, she said, tone measured. Let's finish the formalities. Grant stopped short. You've got to be joking. You already humiliated me upstairs. This isn't a joke. She extended the envelope. Your termination letter. Cause listed. Breach of confidentiality, ethics violations, misconduct under firm policy. He stared at it, jaw set. You think I'm signing that? You don't have to, Reagan replied. It's already effective. He tore open the envelope anyway, eyes skimming the neat paragraphs, the dates, the citations. It was all there. Too clean. Too final. Margot's fingerprints on every line. You people move fast, he said. Reagan's expression didn't change. We had help. Behind her, Simon appeared, carrying Grant's laptop in both hands like evidence in a trial. He placed it on the counter, powered off and labeled with a small yellow tag. Property of Langford and Roth. Hold for forensics. Grant let out a short, humorless laugh. You really think you've got me cornered, don't you? Reagan met his gaze evenly. We don't think. We document. He looked around the lobby. Employees passed in the distance. Whispers, glances, the low murmur of a rumor turning into legend. His legend. Where is she? He demanded. Where's Margot? Reagan tilted her head slightly toward the elevator. Exactly where she should be. Upstairs. Working. Grant's hand tightened around the envelope until it crumpled. He turned toward the glass doors, the security guards falling quietly into step behind him. Every click of his shoes echoed like punctuation marks to a sentence he hadn't written. Outside, the wind coming off Lake Michigan cut sharp enough to sting. He paused under the overhang, trying to steady his breath. His phone buzzed. Lauren. He almost didn't answer. Almost. Where are you? She asked, voice trembling. Fired, he said flatly. Your mother planned it, every move, every setup. She was waiting for this. There was a silence on the line, the kind that wasn't surprise but confirmation. Grant, Lauren said softly. Or you earned it. He stopped walking. What's that supposed to mean? It means she didn't force you to steal files. She didn't write those emails. You did. You're siding with her now? His laugh was jagged, brittle. Of course you are. The Langfords always stick together. Blood over truth, right? Truth over everything, she said quietly. That's what she taught me. The words hit harder than anything Reagan had said. He pressed a hand to his temple, feeling the pulse behind his eyes. You don't understand, Lauren. She hates me. She always has. Maybe she just finally saw you clearly, Lauren said. Her voice cracked, but she didn't take it back. I have to go. Don't hang up on me. But the line went dead. Grant stood on the curb, phone still in his hand, the firm's logo glinting behind him in the glass doors. His reflection stared back. Smaller now, distorted by the wind and the smudge of his breath. Across the street, snow flurries drifted through the morning light, indifferent and endless. Inside, Margot watched from her corner office window. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply observed the man who'd once strutted through her hallways, now reduced to a dark shape shrinking against the city. Donna stepped quietly into the room. "He's gone." Margot nodded. "Did Reagan confirm receipt?" "Signed and time-stamped." Margot turned back to the window. "Good." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The office hummed with distant phones, printers, the ordinary life of a firm continuing as if nothing had shifted. Donna finally broke the silence. "He'll tell people you trapped him." Margot's voice was calm. "Let him. The truth doesn't need defending. It needs documenting." Donna hesitated. "Lauren?" "She'll come around," Margot said, though her tone carried something quieter beneath it. Fatigue, perhaps, or the first ache of consequence. Down on the sidewalk, Grant's cab pulled away, tires slicing through slush. He was gone before the next light changed. Margot closed her blinds halfway, the skyline dimming into reflection. For the first time that morning, she allowed herself a single breath of stillness. Her phone vibrated once on the desk. A message from Reagan. "Termination complete. Access fully revoked." Margot typed a 2-word reply. Confirmed. Authorized. She set the phone aside, her gaze flicking toward the sealed folder labeled Hayes, Final. The edges were crisp, the seal unbroken. Outside, the city kept moving, as it always did. But somewhere deep within its noise, she could almost hear the echo of Grant's words from months ago. "She's losing it." Now, the silence that followed felt like proof of just how wrong he'd been. By late evening, the city had quieted into a kind of exhausted hush. The lake shimmered beneath a pale moon, and from her office window, Margot could see the faint glow of traffic slipping south along Lakeshore Drive. Chicago always looked softer at night, less judgmental. On her desk sat a thick cream-colored envelope, no return address. Donna had left it there before she went home, saying only, "From Lauren's townhouse." Margot turned the envelope over once, then twice. The seal was already slit, as if hesitation were contagious. She pulled out the papers slowly, her pulse steady but deliberate. The first line hit her like cold air. "Petition for dissolution of marriage, Lauren Langford Hayes vs. Grant Hayes." Margot's eyes tracked the signature at the bottom. Lauren M. Langford Hayes. Written in her daughter's neat, careful handwriting. Precise loops, steady pressure, no shaking. The same hand Margot had taught to form cursive at the kitchen table decades ago. Another sheet fluttered loose. Witness, Patrice Ellison. Patrice, Lauren's college roommate. Loyal, pragmatic, the kind of woman who didn't sign anything she didn't believe in. Margot exhaled softly, setting the papers on her desk. For a long moment, she didn't move. The air felt thick, her pulse slow but unflinching. Then she picked up her phone and dialed her daughter. It rang only once. "Mom." Lauren's voice was quiet but steady, as if she'd been waiting for this call. "I got the envelope," Margot said. A pause, then, "I figured you would. I see Patrice's name." "She was there when I drafted it," Lauren said. "She helped me make sure it was clean." Margot hesitated. "When did you start?" "Months ago. Before everything at the firm." That landed like a pin dropped into still water. The ripples spread quietly, touching every corner of the silence between them. "Why didn't you tell me?" Margot asked. "I was scared." "Of him? Of myself?" Margot sat back in her chair, eyes on the city lights flickering like small confessions. "And now? I'm not scared anymore." There it was. Simple, absolute, almost holy. Margot closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle like the final piece of a long puzzle. "Then come home," she said. Lauren's voice softened. "You still call it home. It never stopped being yours." The line went quiet again. Margot could hear the faintest sound of Lauren's breath, shaky but alive. "I'll pack tonight," Lauren finally said. "He's still at a hotel. He doesn't know about the papers yet." "Let him find out from his lawyer," Margot said. "It's cleaner that way." Lauren let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You always did think of everything." "Not everything," Margot admitted. "Not this." For the first time, her voice cracked just slightly, barely enough for Lauren to hear it. "I'll see you soon, Mom." "I'll be here." The line went dead, but the quiet it left behind wasn't empty. It was release. Margot stood and walked to the window. Snow was falling again, lazy and thin, spiraling like ash. Somewhere downtown, the lights of a law firm still burned on, indifferent to who stayed or left. A knock came at the door. Gentle, familiar. Olivia stepped in, cheeks flushed from the cold, holding a paper bag that smelled of thyme and roasted garlic. "I heard you didn't eat lunch," she said. "You'll make me look bad if you pass out in that corner office." Margot smiled faintly. "Still running that kitchen like a courtroom, I see." Olivia grinned. "Someone has to keep your protégés fed." She set a container of soup on the desk, steam curling up between them. The scent of slow-cooked chicken and lemon balm filled the air, grounding and warm. "Thank you," Margot said. "You always bring something right when it's needed." "That's what you taught me," Olivia said. "Timing is everything." Margot picked up the container, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "Timing," she repeated softly. "Yes." Olivia hesitated at the door. "You look tired, Margot. The good kind, like someone who just finished a long case." Margot nodded. "Something like that." When she was alone again, she sat back down, the soup untouched. The divorce papers lay beside her laptop, their neat edges catching the light. She ran her finger down the signature once more, Lauren's handwriting, sure and decisive. A mother's heart should have broken. Instead, Margot felt something steadier rise in its place. Pride. Not for revenge, not for victory, but for the quiet courage that had finally returned to her daughter's voice. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the windows. Somewhere beyond it, she thought she heard the faint hum of a cab engine pulling into her drive. She closed her eyes. Maybe Lauren was already on her way home. By the following week, the snow along Michigan Avenue had melted into gray streaks, and the city seemed to breathe again. Inside Langford and Roth, that same thaw was taking shape. Quietly, deliberately, under Margot's steady hand. Her office smelled faintly of leather and ink. The morning light slanted across her desk, illuminating a neat stack of legal filings, the topmost stamped in blue. Amended ownership record. Majority partner, Margot L. Langford. Grant Hayes's name was gone, erased clean. Margot picked up her pen, her old fountain pen, the one she'd used to sign the firm's founding charter 30 years ago, and drew a single, fluid signature across the line. The sound of the nib scratching paper felt satisfying in a way few things still did. When she looked up, Donna was standing in the doorway, holding a folder and a cautious smile. "It's official," she said. "The state filings went through this morning. His name's off every record, every letterhead, every partnership roll." Margot nodded. "And the website?" "Already updated. You're back on top." Donna placed a printout of the firm's homepage on the desk. Langford, Roth and Associates. Integrity. Precision. Resolve. Below, the partners' photos lined up in symmetrical calm. No trace of Grant remained. Margot studied it for a moment, then leaned back. Good. Make sure every copy of our stationery reflects the same. Already printing the new stock, Donna said. Reagan's office is preparing the bar notification. You'll want to sign that before noon. Bring it here. Donna handed her another document. A formal letter to the Illinois State Bar, notifying them of the firm's completed internal investigation. The language was crisp and clinical, but Margot's additions in the margins sharpened it to a scalpel's edge. When she signed it, she didn't just feel closure, she felt restoration. Reagan entered a few minutes later, her usual calm polished to steel. The committee will acknowledge receipt within 48 hours. Hayes's license will be under review by month's end. Efficient, Margot said. Reagan smiled faintly. He taught us what not to tolerate. Margot met her eyes. You're good at what you do, Reagan. You should know that's rare. Coming from you, that's almost a medal. They both laughed, quietly, briefly, the sound more exhale than joy. When they left her office, Margot sat still for a long time, letting the rhythm of normalcy settle back in. The firm's heartbeat, phones ringing, printers humming, heels clicking down marble, had finally steadied again. It was no longer his rhythm. It was hers. That evening, the private dining room at the lake house was lit in soft amber. Margot had invited only 6 people: Donna, Simon, Reagan, Stanley, Olivia, and Lauren. Her inner circle, the ones who had stayed loyal when silence had been more dangerous than speech. The table glowed with candlelight and polished silver. Olivia had outdone herself. Roast lamb, garlic confit, and wine Margot had saved for a verdict celebration that never came. Glasses clinked. The lake outside was ink black and still, its reflection of the house like a secret kept between them. Stanley leaned back, his smile weary but content. You know, Margot, I've been through more board purges than I care to count. But none this clean. Margot arched an eyebrow. That's because I don't purge, I prune. Donna chuckled softly. And the garden looks better for it. Reagan lifted her glass, eyes sharp in the flicker of the candlelight. To catching snakes before they nest. The room filled with the soft clink of agreement. Margot raised her glass, her smile restrained but genuine. To vigilance, she said, and to the people who keep watch when others look away. Simon gave a small rye toast of his own. And to the best firewall in the Midwest. Laughter warmed the room, easy and deserved. For the first time in months, Margot let it stay. She turned her gaze toward Lauren, seated beside Olivia. Her daughter looked rested, hair loose, color back in her cheeks, that fragile steadiness replaced by something stronger. Lauren lifted her glass last. To a clean beginning, she said quietly. Margot met her eyes. For a moment, everything else in the room blurred. The chatter, the silver, the flickering light. To a clean beginning, Margot repeated. Their glasses touched. Later, when the guests had gone and the lake house was quiet again, Margot stood alone at the window. The snow had returned, soft and patient, tracing white lines over the frozen ground. The firm was safe. The family was healing. The empire she built had survived. And yet, in the stillness, she could feel something shifting, something just beyond the horizon. Her phone buzzed on the sideboard. A message, unsigned, unnumbered. You might have won, but you don't own the truth. Margot's pulse slowed. She stared at the screen, her reflection ghosted in the glass. Then she set the phone down, untouched. Outside, the lake wind rose again, rattling the windows like a reminder that peace, even earned, is never permanent. The first week after his firing, Grant Hayes still woke up at 6. Habit, the muscle memory of a man who used to matter. He shaved, tied a tie he didn't need, and sat at the kitchen counter of a rented River North apartment, watching the coffee drip in slow, mechanical rhythm. By the second week, He'd stopped wearing the tie. By the third, he stopped checking his phone before noon. The calls that used to come like clockwork, clients, colleagues, reporters, had vanished. The only ring he heard now was the hollow kind, echoing from an empty inbox. The silence wasn't accidental. It was curated. Grant didn't know it yet, but the city's law circles were already circling the wagons. HR directors spoke quietly over lunch, recruiters traded polite warnings in coded language, and one by one, the doors that had once opened to him began to close. By the fourth week, his resume had been sent to 6 firms. None replied. By the fifth, one firm finally did. Mr. Hayes, thank you for your interest. After review, we are pursuing other candidates at this time. The words were polite, antiseptic, and final. He sat in the dim light of the apartment that night, laptop open, the city's glow bleeding through half-drawn blinds. His reflection stared back from the screen, a man wearing defeat like an expensive suit that didn't fit anymore. He checked LinkedIn, scrolling through the names of people who used to flatter him. Every single connection under Langford and Roth had gone quiet. Even the junior associates who once laughed at his jokes had removed their endorsements. His references, men who'd shaken his hand over cocktails, who'd promised to put in a word, weren't returning calls. He left voicemails anyway. Hey, Steve, just wanted to follow up. Tom, checking if you got my email. Listen, I'm free for coffee anytime next week. No one called back. Across town, the Langford and Roth offices gleamed brighter than they had in months. The tension that used to cling to the walls had lifted. Conversations carried laughter again. In her office, Margot reviewed the final draft of the firm's quarterly report. Donna stood nearby, sliding a crisp sheet of paper from the printer. Final invoice for the Hayes matter, Donna said. Margot adjusted her glasses. The line item read simply, termination, administrative closure. Beneath it, a single notation, case complete. She picked up her pen, uncapped it with precision, and signed in blue ink. Her signature a graceful loop of finality. Violet, she said. Donna smiled faintly. With pleasure. Margot leaned back, gaze drifting to the framed skyline on the opposite wall. Reputation takes years to build, she murmured. But ruin is mercifully efficient. Donna tilted her head. You almost sound poetic. Margot's lips curved. Just experienced. Lauren visited that afternoon, her hair tied back, her expression calm but lighter somehow. She stood in the doorway holding a sealed envelope. It's done, she said. Filed this morning. Margot nodded. The divorce? Lauren exhaled. Final in 90 days. There was no drama in her voice, no bitterness. Just relief. The kind that came from no longer pretending. Good, Margot said softly. He'll find out soon enough. Lauren set the envelope on the desk and smiled faintly. I don't care when he finds out. I'm already gone. Margot reached across the desk, covering her daughter's hand with her own. That's what matters. The next day, Margot met with Stanley and Reagan in the firm's boardroom. A new project proposal lay between them, the header embossed in gold, the Langford Women's Initiative Fund. Reagan tapped the document. Seed monies allocated. We can launch within the quarter. Grants, mentorship, legal scholarships, the whole framework's ready. Margot studied the outline. Good. Make it public. Quietly at first. Stanley adjusted his glasses. You're not doing this for the press, then? Margot smiled, slow and deliberate. No. I'm doing it for balance. Donna stepped in halfway through the meeting, handing over a printed press release draft. You'll want to see the last page, she said. Margot skimmed it, then stopped. At the bottom, in clean black lettering, it read, The Langford and Roth Women's Initiative Fund, dedicated to the advancement of women in law, in honor of Lauren M. Langford Hayes. Margot looked up sharply. Who added that? Reagan met her gaze. We did. You built the firm. She'll build what comes next. For a moment, Margot said nothing. Then she nodded once, slowly. Make it official. Stanley raised his glass of water in a quiet toast to legacies that adapt. Margot didn't drink. She was still watching the paper, the name at the bottom, her daughter's name, printed beneath the firm she'd once been too afraid to claim. That evening, Lauren stopped by her mother's office again, unaware of the announcement waiting to go live. She found Margot at her desk, reviewing donation drafts and legal disclosures. What are you working on now? Lauren asked. Margot looked up, eyes softening. Something for the next generation. Lauren smiled. You never stop, do you? Not when the work's worth finishing. Lauren hesitated, then said, I heard from Grant's lawyer. He's trying to contest the non-compete. Said no firm will touch him. Margot's tone stayed even. They won't. Lauren studied her for a long moment. You're not worried he'll come after you? Margot shook her head. He already tried. The rest is noise. Lauren reached across the desk, resting her hand on her mother's arm. You really did save everything, didn't you? Margot smiled faintly. No, darling. I just made sure what mattered survived. The next morning, the firm's website refreshed at 8 a.m. sharp. Grant Hayes opened it from his laptop, maybe out of curiosity, maybe masochism. The homepage gleamed brighter than before. His name was nowhere to be found. At the top of the newsfeed, a new headline appeared. Langford and Roth launches Women's Mentorship Fund, dedicated to the future of female leadership in law, established in honor of Lauren M. Langford Hayes. Grant stared at the screen for a long time, the reflection of his face fractured across the glass. Then he laughed. A hollow, humorless sound that broke off before it began. Outside, the winter wind whipped across the city, carrying snow and grit and the faint echo of a truth Margot already knew. Power wasn't taken. It was reclaimed. And this time, she'd passed it on. Spring came late to Chicago that year, but when it did, it arrived with the quiet confidence of something that had survived a long winter. The snow melted from the courthouse steps, the lake thawed into a dull silver mirror, and inside Langford and Roth, a new kind of rhythm took hold. Steady, disciplined, alive. The quarterly numbers were the first sign. Reagan brought the report into Margot's office one bright Friday morning, a faint grin flickering past her professional calm. You'll want to see this. Margot adjusted her glasses. The document was short, neat, definitive. Revenue up 23%. Operating costs down by nearly 10%. New client acquisition steady. Well, Margot said, flipping to the final page, it seems silence is profitable. Reagan chuckled. Apparently, so is integrity. Margot allowed herself a small smile. They're harder to confuse now. Outside her office window, the city glowed, glass and steel catching the morning sun like a verdict in her favor. For the first time in months, the hum inside her chest wasn't tension. It was pride. A week later, a copy of Midwest Legal Journal arrived in Donna's inbox, flagged for Margot's attention. The headline on the second page read, Margot Langford, the Architect of Reinvention. The accompanying photo captured her perfectly, shoulders squared, expression calm but not soft, the Chicago skyline blurring behind her. The article described her not as a survivor of scandal, but as its countermeasure. It praised her leadership through structural renewal, her decades-long commitment to ethics and excellence, her ability to turn internal reckoning into institutional rebirth. Donna set the magazine on Margot's desk. You made the feature. Margot glanced at the page, then closed the magazine. Good for the firm, she said simply. Donna grinned. Good for the legend. On the south side, Olivia's restaurant, Harbor and Grain, was expanding. She'd called Margot 3 months earlier, nervous about the lease on the adjacent building. Now, as the construction crew installed new windows, Olivia stood beside her silent investor on the sidewalk, both women in tailored coats, watching progress unfold. "They said we'd be ready by summer," Olivia said. "You'll come to the opening, right?" Margot tilted her head, half smiling. "I don't do grand openings. This one's different. No press, just people who built something that lasted." "Then I'll come," Margot said. Olivia looked at her. "You know, I couldn't have done any of this without that loan." "It wasn't a loan," Margot corrected. "It was belief. You repaid it the moment you made it work." Olivia smiled softly. "That's why I tell my staff about you. Every kitchen needs someone who can make the fire mean something." Margot almost laughed. "That sounds dramatic. Not to anyone who's ever burned out." They stood in silence for a moment, the air cool but mercifully gentle. "Thank you," Olivia said finally. Margot nodded once. "Keep building." Back at the firm, the changes continued. Lauren now led the pro bono division. Her first initiative, a legal defense program for women-owned startups, had already drawn state recognition. She worked with quiet efficiency, her mother's discipline but her own warmth. Every memo signed L. Langford Hayes, Director, Community Affairs. One afternoon, Margot passed by her daughter's new office. Through the glass, she saw Lauren bent over a stack of case files, sleeves rolled up, a team of junior associates gathered around her. The sight caught her off guard. So familiar, it almost felt like looking back in time. Donna appeared beside her. "She's good at it." "I know," Margot said softly. "She's better than I was at her age." Donna smiled. "You built the structure. She's filling it with purpose." Margot looked through the glass again. "That's the idea." Late that night, the building was nearly empty when Simon appeared in her doorway, a faint glow from his tablet lighting his face. "Firewall updates live," he said. "Full redundancy, encrypted monitoring, no external vulnerabilities." Margot arched a brow. "You're speaking to a lawyer, Simon." "English, please." He grinned. "It means no one's getting through your systems again. Not even ghosts." "Good," she said. "I prefer my ghosts where I can see them." Simon hesitated. "You've rebuilt everything stronger. Most people don't get to do that twice." Margot looked out the window at the city lights reflected on the lake. "Most people don't lose what they built in the first place." He nodded, sensing that was as close to reflection as she'd allow, and left her to the quiet. Margot walked the halls of the firm one last time that night. Heels echoing on marble, the air perfumed with faint notes of toner and coffee, the scent of work, of purpose. At the end of the corridor, the boardroom stood empty, polished, waiting. The room that had once held whispers now carried something else. Respect. She paused at the door, listening. Nothing but the hum of the vents and the faint tick of the clock. The whisper was gone. In its place was the sound of belonging, the measured calm of a woman who had reclaimed everything she'd built and fortified it for those who would inherit it. Margot turned off the lights and walked back toward her office. Her phone buzzed once in her coat pocket. A message from Reagan. Subject: New firewall protocols. Body: Simon says even you can't break in now. Margot smiled to herself, typing a quick reply. That's how I know it's finally safe. She slipped her phone away, her reflection catching briefly in the darkened glass as she passed. For the first time in years, it looked whole. The city was awake before the sun. Chicago's skyline, rimmed in gold, stretched across the lake like a verdict delivered overnight. From her car window, Margot watched it glide past, the towers, the cranes, the glass that had learned to bend and endure. The driver slowed as they neared the Langford and Roth Tower. She could already see her reflection in its mirrored front. A silhouette, upright and certain. The building had always seemed taller in winter light, more honest somehow. As she stepped into the marble lobby, the hush that followed was immediate and familiar. Associates lifted their eyes. Junior partners paused mid-conversation, and, almost instinctively, the staff straightened when she passed. Margot didn't acknowledge the gesture directly. She simply nodded. A small, composed acknowledgement that carried more authority than any greeting. The elevator ride was silent, smooth. The mirrored doors reflected the faintest curve of her smile. When they opened onto the 39th floor, the hum of the firm greeted her. Printers, phones, quiet footsteps on polished tile. Her office door had changed. The new brass nameplate gleamed in the morning light. Founding Chair Emeritus, M. Langford. She stood there for a moment, reading it like a headline from another lifetime. Donna had insisted on the title change. Reagan had pushed for the Emeritus honorific. Margot had pretended not to care, but now, standing in front of it, she realized she did. It wasn't an ending. It was a seal. Inside, everything smelled faintly of cedar and espresso. Donna had already set out her morning coffee, a small act of loyalty Margot never took for granted. She poured the dark brew into her mug, the one she'd kept for 30 years, porcelain white with a single phrase scripted across it in fading navy ink. Watch your tone. I still own the building. It had been a joke once, a gift from Stanley on her 50th birthday. Now it felt more like prophecy. The first sip was perfect. Outside her window, the lake shimmered like steel, and in the distance, sunlight touched the gold lettering of the firm's logo. Restored, unmarred. The whisper was gone. In its place, something stronger pulsed through the walls. Stability. Margot set her mug down and turned to her desk. A single folder sat there. Cream paper. Embossed seal. Donna's note was clipped to the front. Margot, congratulations again. Couldn't resist forwarding this one personally. D. She unfolded the letter. Dear Ms. Langford, the National Association of Corporate Law invites you to deliver the keynote address at our annual summit in Washington, D.C., honoring 50 years of professional excellence and ethical leadership. We believe your legacy exemplifies integrity in practice and in principle. Margot read the words twice before setting the letter aside. A keynote, after everything. She smiled. Barely, but enough. Donna knocked once and entered. Press team already reached out. Want me to draft a response? Margot shook her head. No, I'll handle it myself. Donna's grin widened. Of course you will. When she left, Margot leaned back, turning her chair toward the window. The skyline gleamed, layered in glass and resilience. She'd won back everything, her firm, her name, her daughter's future. Not by noise, not by vengeance, but by control. Quiet, deliberate control. The intercom buzzed once. Ms. Langford, the receptionist's voice said. A former employee just walked through the lobby. Should we... No, Margot interrupted softly. Just let him pass. She rose and crossed the office, standing behind the tinted glass that overlooked the entrance. Down below, Grant Hayes walked across the lobby floor. Slower now, shoulders squared out of pride more than confidence. His coat was creased, his briefcase worn. He kept his head down, his gaze on the revolving doors. He didn't look up, not once, but Margot did. She watched him cross the threshold, disappearing into the bright morning light, swallowed by the motion of the city he'd once tried to master. She didn't feel anger or triumph, only distance, the kind built on time and clarity. Behind her, the firm moved on. Meetings resumed, phones rang, deals closed. The empire pulsed steadily, rebuilt brick by brick on the foundation she'd refused to surrender. Margot walked back to her desk, sat down, and opened her email. The subject line from the summit committee glowed at the top. Keynote confirmation request. She clicked reply. I accept. Topic: the cost of underestimation. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. She reached for her mug, the porcelain warm in her hand, and looked once more toward the empty skyline where the past had vanished. He whispered I was losing it, she murmured to herself, voice calm and certain. A small smile traced her lips. But he lost everything I built. She took one last sip of coffee and began to type.